Good morning, everyone. Dr. Christine Smith. I have a really cool guest for you this morning, Dr. Emily Kiberd, and she is a specialist in Hashimoto's, and that is basically an autoimmune thyroid condition for those of you that don't know. So I'm going to go ahead and bring her on. Go. Okay. But yeah, so Dr. Emily and I know each other through a variety of different intermingled networks. Hello there. How are
What's
you?
up, lady?
Excellent. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And yeah, I love teaching people about the physiology, especially around the immune system, so that they can start to have an understanding of how their bodies work and what things to look out for and how to listen to their body in a way. And I know you specialize a lot in exercise and how to do that in a sustainable way with autoimmune. So I'd love if you just introduce yourself to everybody a little bit and yeah, we'll kind of get rolling.
Yeah. Well, last time I saw you, we were having gluten-free Mexican food.
That's right.
So fun. Um, so I've been a chiropractor since 2007, and I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's in 2016 after the birth of my son, my firstborn, and kind of all the symptoms at the time. I didn't know were Hashimoto's. I didn't even know what Hashimoto's was. And I just kind of assumed that this was like, this is what it's like to be a new mom. It's like, I'm going to always be tired and have difficulty losing weight, and my hair will be falling out. And I'll be able to start my sentence, but I won't know how to finish it. Like, that's just like my new norm. And 18 months postpartum, I'm like, this cannot be how life goes on. This is like the worst. So started to look for, went through conventional medicine. I went through 5 doctors actually, and then found my current functional medicine doc. And her and I would co-treat patients in New York City. She would do the functional medicine, and she's like, listen, they have super low muscle mass. They have joint pain, muscle aches. They need your help in rehab and strength. So I was looking at the autoimmune population, specifically women with Hashimoto's was the majority of it, from a movement and strength perspective. And I let someone else deal with all the functional medicine pieces. And there were certain things that I noticed, specifically like harder time keeping our muscle mass, especially the hypothyroid women, um, and some other clinical observations as well with around hypermobility. And all the women were like, I just want a massage. Please just adjust me head to toe. Like my joints ache. Teach me some stretches and some foam rolling. And ultimately, I was like, we'll do like some very specific adjustments. We'll do some ART, some active release. But ultimately, you need to start to resistance train. A lot of them are just walking or doing maybe walking and Pilates. And I was like, you need more. Like, you need more for your body to start to maintain your muscle mass. And when I did that, put them on a resistance training program. And it wasn't like they were doing 5 days a week. They were doing 3 days a week, 20, working up to 30 minutes each session. And their joints were more stable. They had more energy. They felt better in their body. They didn't have as much joint pain. And so out of that came, you know, trying to help their sister that was in Florida, So they're like, oh, I wish she could come up and see you up in New York, but she's in Florida. And I was like, well, some of this stuff is like learning the basics, like learning the foundation, like, it's like teaching a patient to sleep, eat well, and exercise before maybe starting a more rigorous detox protocol. But yeah, so I was like, listen, a lot of the things that I'm saying can be taught in an online platform. And that was what Thyroid Strong was born out of.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And for those who maybe the concept of like the physiology around the thyroid is kind of new for you, the reason what she's talking about is super important is because it's a different way to work with your cellular energy cycles when you're doing something like resistance training, and it's very different than cardio. It puts a different kind of stress on the cells, and exercise is important. It's a stress that we call like eustress, right? It's a good stress. It's a stress that we need to regenerate and grow. But one of the tricky things about if your thyroid isn't functioning quite right is the hormone that's involved with thyroid is really involved in cellular metabolism. And so that's one of the reasons you can feel super fatigued and it's kind of have the brain fog that she was talking about. And I like to, in functional medicine, I like to consider the thyroid the sentinel of the body. It's kind of this like sensory system. And so if I see the thyroid starting to be off, it tells me that that person has been dealing with inflammation for a little while. And like a really common thing, like she mentioned, is for it to happen after pregnancy. And it's just because of all the crazy hormone shifts that the female body goes through after pregnancy. And it's most common for women in middle age to develop Hashimoto's. And that can be because your immune system goes through a lot of transitions too, because it's trying to relearn everything to like not attack this other organism that's growing in your body. And so then your immune system is going through these shifts. And if you're dealing with a little bit of inflammation and you're dealing with some toxicity and you're dealing with some leaky gut, and then you go through pregnancy and then you go through birth, which is basically a giant injury to your body and creates a whole inflammatory cascade for you to heal, and then all your hormones are going through this huge shift again while you're also still like breastfeeding. It's just like so many shifts for your body to go through at once. It can be a lot to manage. So when this starts to happen, it can mean that there can also be some other work to do in functional medicine, like working on gut health and making sure that your environment is not toxic. And this is why I'm such a huge advocate for making sure to like, you know, vote with your dollar, like pay for the brands that you like to remove toxicity from your life. And I know that's stuff that Dr. Kiberd addresses as well. But the exercise component, that's a tricky one. And I think it's why it's really important that she teaches this stuff to people, because you can overdo it on exercise. And if you overdo it when you're already struggling with your cellular metabolism, it can actually cause some damage to your cells. So I'd love if you could give your 2 cents on that as well.
Yeah, so I like to, because I think the common recommendation for exercise, especially with an autoimmune condition, is to do less, to not overdo it. So, like low impact, Pilates, yoga,
Yeah, it's
stretching,
all about the
take a
balance
walk.
of it.
Yeah, and it is a balance. And I think there is a time and place for that, especially like you mentioned, like maybe you have someone who hasn't started to optimize your thyroid hormones or hasn't even started to take the journey of addressing gut dysbiosis or a leaky gut,
Yeah.
or maybe they're living in like water damaged mold. I know you and I have both gone through that journey very brutally.
Yeah, that's a, and
Little
it's more common than
PTSD.
people
Oh
realize.
my God, so common, even in a dry place like Colorado. And so I think if you haven't even started to like take that journey on, then that low impact exercise might be right for you in this time of life because, like you said, exercise is a stressor. And if you already have, all these stressors added up, like living in a moldy apartment, it's just going to be more challenging. It's going to tank your energy. But on the flip side, if you are starting to work with a doctor to optimize your thyroid hormones, if you are taking steps to support your adrenals, if you're starting to work on healing your gut,
It can
then I
boost
think,
your cellular
and boost
metabolism.
your cellular metabolism, then I think it's important to start to feed your muscle tissue appropriately. The muscle
Yes.
tissue is the largest endocrine organ in the body. So oftentimes we think, okay, it's just this like little thing right here, this little butterfly gland, but there's actually the when you contract the muscle, it secretes myokines, right, which are proteins that then can affect your hormones and affect your immune system. So just like your thyroid can secrete thyroid hormone and it gets metabolized in the liver, same thing, like your muscles um, secrete proteins that then can affect your hormones. So it's kind of cool to think that you could literally have an effect, because sometimes when you think about, oh, like I'll take a medication and will have an effect on my hormones. If I seed cycle, it will have an effect on my hormones. But you can literally do something in the immediate moment, like contract a muscle, lift a weight, lift a
Yep.
load, and start to affect your hormones. So that's how I frame it. And I think there's a certain point where doing low impact is not enough, especially when it comes to energy, because there's mitochondria in the cells. The more muscle tissue you have, the more mitochondria, the little powerhouses you're going to have.
Yep.
So once someone starts to address gut health, is working with someone to optimize their thyroid hormones, then I think it's like, okay, let's start to build your resilience and your energy and boost your mitochondria by resistance training. I'm not talking like 6 days a week, like CrossFit 6 days a week. I'm just talking like 3 days a week, maybe four if you're feeling amazing, 30 minutes. Yeah.
Yep. And You can like the resistance training stuff is so cool because you get so many extra benefits out of it too. Like it helps with bone density. So if you're also in middle age and you're struggling with like osteopenia, it's probably the most important thing you can do is resistance training to make sure to maintain that. So it's all about like doing it in this balance that she's talking about. And that's why I do these talks and why I help people understand physiology so that you can check in with yourself and figure out where your body is at in this process and be like, ooh, like, am I ready for that? So if you do some resistance training and it just like completely tanks you for the next couple days, then maybe you ease into that a little bit more. But this is exactly why she teaches the stuff that she teaches is to help people move through that process in a way that's totally sustainable. And this is why I teach what I teach, right? Is like teaching people how to listen to their body and how to figure out like, oh, I did just eat something that inflamed me the other day. Maybe I should wait until next week to eat that thing again. And then I should be a little bit gentler with myself today because my body is in a state where it's working on something else. And when we can start to teach our clients about like this dynamic moving system that is your body, or like maybe for women, you take into account your cycle as you go through the month, and it might be different. It might be better to do exercise at different times depending on where your hormones are in your cycle because they all interplay. Like they're not separate from your thyroid hormone, and you can have different things going on with your thyroid hormone as well. Like you can maybe have a better T4 production, but maybe not as good of a T3 conversion. And then if you have something called like reverse T3 showing up, it can actually mean that you're still dealing with quite a bit of inflammation and maybe there's some more gut work to do. And I just want to list this so that you guys know what to ask your doctors because a lot of people think that a blood test for a thyroid is TSH. TSH is actually a measure of a chemical coming from your brain going to your thyroid. So TSH is a reflection of what's coming out of the thyroid, but it's not a direct measurement. So if I run a thyroid panel for people, I run TSH, I run free T4, I run free T3, I run reverse T3, I run TPO antibodies and thyroglobulin antibodies. And that is what I consider a full thyroid panel. And that's not even including the other blood work that I do. So just so you guys know, like, just so you know, just to educate you so that you can start asking questions in your own life and feel educated about your body. And I'm sure Dr. Kiberd has thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think, when I was first diagnosed, my first four doctors only ordered TSH because they're like, you're like 35, you look normal, you're fine. And then when my current functional medicine doc, she's like, yeah, your thyroid antibodies are off the charts. And so you have an autoimmune condition that's currently active. It's caught early. Let's see if we can get it into remission. And I think, just to also add to that is like there's conventional range that's much broader that includes the
Yes.
very sick. And then there's optimal range, which I know that you use and is really a range, we all want to feel like our best selves. So why just shoot for kind of like average Joe? Like we want to feel optimized. So I would highly encourage everyone to see a practitioner that is working with you to help you get in that optimal range. I know when I was first diagnosed, my TSH was like 3.2, which is like just out of optimal. And I felt like death. I was like on the couch all the
Oh,
time. So for those women that I get DMs from, they're like, oh my God, my TSH is 12. I'm like, I don't even know how they're like functioning in the world, But I think
yep.
it's important to work with a practitioner that not only tries to work with an optimal range, but also um, doesn't wait, right? So if they're like, oh, it's like a little elevated, it's like, we'll just wait. We'll just wait and see, wait and see. Like, why not catch something early through proper labs? Because if Hashimoto is caught early before there's too much destruction of the thyroid gland, you could go into remission if you took all the steps. So,
Yes, and thank
yeah,
you. Thank you for mentioning that you can go into remission, right?
you can
Because
go into remission.
when you look this stuff up online, it says there's no cure for Hashimoto's, it'll never go away.
Yeah.
That's a very blunt statement that I don't think is completely scientifically founded because there's a ton of cases of people going into remission because that's how our immune systems work and this is how inflammation works. And this is where where I think it's really important to educate people, because one of the reasons that we kind of end up in an autoimmune state is basically just our body is dealing with so much that it gets kind of confused. And when your thyroid is stressed and inflamed, it starts to have a little bit of damage. And then your immune system goes over and tries to help clean up the damage, but then kind of gets confused in the process of doing that and maybe tags some of the wrong things. And then all of a sudden you start attacking your own cells by accident. And that's how we kind of develop this. But if your immune system is on overdrive, because let's say you have really bad leaky gut or you had an infection a while ago, and your gut is where your immune system goes to get trained on how to operate, and now it's getting trained to operate in a really inflammatory way, it becomes harder and harder to downregulate the immune system while your gut is in a bad state. And this is why like it's not separate when you're working on things like thyroid health or hormone health, is because it's tied to the inflammatory processes. So if we can start to work with our bodies where we are reducing our inflammation, which means, you know, taking care of ourselves by the food that we eat and what we put in our mouth and making sure it's real food and not processed fake food that's made to look like food, and we make sure that we don't have toxins in our environment, and we're working on our personal internal mental stress levels and how we perceive the world around us, because yes, anxiety and all of that actually sends us into an inflammatory state. And that's one of the tough parts about operating in our world, and why I'm such an advocate for mindfulness, is it's basically retraining your immune system from the mental side. So like the classic philosophical approach in the chiropractic philosophy, which is, you know, really quite broad, and it's just about helping the nervous system and the body find balance, is thoughts, traumas, toxins. Those are the things that you need to address for your health. And I actually had a question pop up here. I'm going to click it so that you can see it too.
Yeah.
So someone said, what's a reasonable amount of exercise for a 49-year-old woman that's in good shape but beginning menopause, very active, runs plus 3 to 4 strength training sessions a week? Is that too much? So I'll let you kind of give your expertise on that.
Yeah. I mean, I think in a dream world, that is, if you're, I try to get women to hit their 10,000 steps a day and then to resistance train 3 to 4 times a week. Maybe 30, 40 minutes if they're like, everything is like they're sleeping well, they're not like overly stressed. I think to start at that, like if you've never worked out before, that's a lot. But I think that is actually an ideal amount. I just interviewed someone for the podcast, Esther Blum. Do you know who she is?
That
She's on the East
sounds
Coast.
familiar.
She
Okay.
has a book called See You Later, Ovulator, and it's all about kind of a functional medicine approach to menopause. And that is her exact recommendation, is like 10,000 steps a day and resistance training 3 times a week. So yeah, especially with menopause. And resistance training is lifting weights. Um, I can't think of any bad reason to have more muscle on the body. We go to like more mitochondria, more energy. Um, it's a glucose sink. It is neuroprotective. Like I was trying to think the other day, is there like any downside to having more muscle? You're like better longevity related to grip strength, like you
The
burn more
only
calories at rest.
the only thing because I end up working with like a lot of CrossFitters and stuff too, right?
Yeah.
And they're very into building muscle mass. The only thing that I can think of is like make sure that you're walking sometimes. Like just literally just walking. Like it doesn't even have to be running. Just go for a walk sometimes, and it helps maintain your heart health while you're also building a lot of muscle mass. But, I think the only people that struggle with it are those that are really, really building a ton while not keeping an eye on their vascular health. But otherwise,
Mm,
it's like there's never a downside to building muscle mass. And I saw another question from someone like, does this matter if you're over 70? I'm just going to say, I think it's even more important for you
yeah.
if you're over that age when it comes back to the bone health thing as well. And there's like, if you just Google like bodybuilding grandma, you'll see that there's an incredible amount of muscle mass that you can build in your 60s, 70s plus, and there's some women doing some incredible things out there. So like
Train
don't
with
doubt.
Train with Joan.
Oh
Have you seen her
man, no,
on the
I
Tool
haven't. But
Room? Oh
like
my God, she's a
don't
beast.
don't doubt yourself. Like it's so cool. I love seeing women do that. And there was one other question about the blood test. So I'm going to post this video and you can go back and listen to what we were talking about on the blood test too, because I only have uh so much attention span to be able to read and talk and ask questions. So, but I know you also have like courses that you run that kind of teach people how to do this. What do you like to teach? Because I know you also put a, for anybody who's curious, she has a great Instagram channel herself. You can just click on her name and she's posting stuff like all the time about different workouts, and she's really good with kettlebells. And if you have no idea how to work with kettlebells, like they're really actually, they can actually be pretty fun. And
Oh yeah.
there's a lot of ways that you can use them. You can get really creative.
Yeah.
And it's an easy thing to have at
Yeah.
home.
So, I mean, I have a course called Thyroid Strong. I have a master class coming up later today. Because as you know, women with Hashimoto's, the two biggest struggles is the fatigue, and then it's also the difficulty in losing weight. And so I like to teach on fatigue because I feel like if you have more energy, you can do anything like work out and but women kept on emailing me being like, well, what about the weight? So I'm doing a master class. It's 3 parts. Today is how to eat to lose weight. Wednesday, which is my wedding anniversary. My husband was like, "You
Oh,
just put this masterclass on the calendar on our wedding anniversary." Is how to work out to lose weight, and then the last one is how to start to identify root triggers that could be contributing to that inflammatory load. I'm mainly going to focus on the environmental piece,
yep.
but obviously there's those other pieces of like our thoughts and past traumas. Um, and so yeah, and I'm gonna frame it around muscle and protein, and we'll talk a little bit about calories because calories do matter. But yeah, so that's what's I've been working on all weekend is just kind of putting the final touches on that PowerPoint.
Perfect.
And a lot of it comes from the work of like Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, who's my functional medicine doc, and then also kind of like the protein people out there like Stu Phillips and Donald Lehman, who are kind of like the guys who do all the research, but they don't have a platform. Like they're not like going on Instagram, right? But they're the ones doing all the research for us to to better understand what's going on in the body. And it's at 4 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Eastern. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I just saw someone ask about time, and then someone else said they're diagnosed with Graves, which, so let me just continue on like the physiology
Yeah.
education, right? So Hashimoto's is when your immune system is accidentally attacking some of the thyroid cells. Your thyroid hormone can sometimes go up in the beginning, and then it can kind of crash because it's basically like leaking out of the cells. It increases in the blood, and then the cells are damaged, so they can't produce it as much, so then it goes down. Graves is like a different version of it where your body basically accidentally produces an antibody that looks like basically like a thyroid stimulating hormone, and it lands on the thyroid, and then it stimulates the thyroid to produce too much thyroid hormone, and then you can like it struggle with opposite issues, but you can also deal with fatigue because you can't sleep and things like that. And but then they put it went into remission, even though a doctor told me that would never happen. And
Mm.
this is like the funny thing about that's coming out with like functional medicine and integrative medicine is it's a totally different perspective on how we study the body. So instead of just being like, this is a thing that's happened and there's no way to reverse it, we say, well, we actually don't know because there's a lot of stuff that we don't understand about the body, and there's people that do it all the time, and everybody experiences different things. And in functional and integrative medicine, it's basically like, well, if we get the body balanced, it was designed to heal itself. So most of the time, if we get everything in the right place, it can do that. And like I had my own experience with my body healing stuff that I was told that would never heal. Like I had like bone and cartilage lesions and my body regrew cartilage, and I had 10 doctors tell me that would never happen. And I went doctor shopping, which you're allowed to do, by the way. You're allowed to go doctor shopping just like you can go shopping for an electrician or a car. Like you go pick what's best for you and what resonates with you and what resonates with your belief system. And that's probably going to be the best fit for you. So never be afraid to get a second opinion. And if you go to a doctor and they're not asking you a ton of questions about your health and your history, find someone that's curious, find someone that's learning, find someone that's always educating themselves. And I think that is usually one of your best bets, because I get people who ask me all the time, like, how do I find a good functional medicine doctor? And like, find someone who's curious, find someone who learns, find someone who puts content out and educates, because doctors are supposed to teach. Doctor actually means teacher, and a lot of people don't realize that. So, like, don't be afraid to ask questions and don't be afraid to explore and see what's out there. And then the other component that I really like teaching people about that I think is really skipped over in healthcare these days is mindset and working with your brain, especially when your brain is in a place where you're really fatigued, because you can get in these funky slumps where you're fatigued and therefore you're not thinking as well and therefore you're not able to logic through things as well, and then you actually get more anxiety and then it causes stress and you get caught in this like ugly little cycle. And this is why like I love collaborating with people like Dr. Kiberd, right? Is because she teaches stuff that I don't teach and I teach other things to support people in realms that maybe she doesn't teach. So if you guys are wanting to work more on your physical health and you're specifically working around thyroid stuff, like she's your gal. If you feel like you are in the beginning of this and maybe you're not quite there yet and you need a little extra support, like feel free to explore my channel. Like anything with a title page is an interview with some other wonderful practitioner because I just want people to learn and I just want to get this information out there. And there's stuff about gut health, there's stuff about brain health, there's stuff about hormones, and that's just all free content. And then if you need extra support, you can go to the link in my bio and like I run group courses all the time and I have a pre-recorded course and I know Dr. Kibber does as well. So we try really hard to make it accessible for everybody because we know not everyone's like ready to come into the clinic or it might not fit into their schedule. So we want these things to be accessible to you at home. So just know that there's support and know that there is other things out there to start to educate you about your own physiology because I want people to feel empowered around their health. I think there's been a lot of stuff that's happened in the last few years that has made a lot of people feel powerless and kind of feel like victims to everything going on around them. But if we can start to understand our own physiology and start to read the language of our bodies and know things that you can do, like resistance training, and learn how to do it, right? Because we can tell you, oh yeah, go resistance train, but people are like, I don't know how to do that. And that's exactly what Dr. Kipper does her course, is to show you how. And like I think this is kind of the evolution of healthcare and medicine, and what's happening is we're starting to let people take their health back into their own hands and advocate for you to be a participant in your care and a participant in like speaking to your body instead of just relying on being fixed, which is a very disempowering place to be.
Yeah, 100%.
Yes. Anyway, sorry, there's my soapbox.
That's all good.
Anyway, let's see. Any other like major things that you would love people to kind of know about Hashimoto's or thyroid or the physiology around it, or just like some of your big epiphanies that you had?
Um, I think one of the things, and this relates to more like fatigue, but also weight loss, is I think the current dietary recommendations for protein are too low. And,
I
you know,
agree.
I shoot for 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight, minimum 30 grams per meal to stimulate muscle protein synthesis. And I've recommended that, like, no one's even like touched a kettlebell yet. All they did is like up their protein, and they're like, these women with Hashimoto's are like, I have so much energy.
Can't build
Yeah.
muscle if you don't have the building blocks.
And so we're going to talk a lot about protein later today. But one of the things that comes with protein is like it's nutrient dense. It is has a higher thermogenic effect, so it takes more energy to digest compared to fat or a carb. So a lot of women will get constipated, and they're like, "Well, I'm already constipated with Hashimoto's." So we'll talk about how to either supplement or things you could do before you eat or after you eat and at nighttime to help with digestion of protein. Um, because it's great to up your protein intake, but then if you're super constipated, it kind of sucks. So,
It's Yeah. And people
yeah,
don't realize how important that is, right? Because that's how our body detoxifies itself. So it's actually very
yeah,
important to get that moving on a daily basis. I'm just going
yeah,
to say this because you'd be surprised how many people I've run into that don't know this, or no one ever told them, or their doctor never talked to them about it. You're supposed to poop every single
yeah,
day, every
yes,
day.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. Especially if you have any sort of like estrogen dominant signs, especially like the
Oh, yeah.
menopause ladies that are holding more weight around their hips or their tummy. Yeah, you gotta poop. Yeah.
Yep. Beautiful.
So,
And
yeah.
then someone else had one other question that popped up. Can you have constant irregular heartbeat from poor thyroid function without blood work being way off? I'll let you touch on that a little bit.
I'm gonna let you touch on that. You're way better with blood work than I am.
Sure. Yes. So you like, I saw this. Oh, it's great. It's going around Instagram. I'll try to post it on my story after this. And like, I know so many amazing doctors and MDs and DOs and NPs and you name it, who are like so good at blood work and so good at doing this work. So like I speak to those, but there's this really funny meme going around of this security guard basically like standing, letting people into a stadium and just like going like this and like not even touching the
Oh yeah.
person, waving them through.
Yeah.
And it's like what your doctor does for a physical check when your blood work looks fine. And like, oh,
Yeah.
I run into this all the time. So this is why we use functional ranges in blood work, right? Because currently the way that blood work is read, especially for functional labs, is it's within a set of standard deviations. That's basically a sciencey statistical term for our blood work ranges are based on the average person. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't consider the average person all that healthy, so I don't want my blood work ranges based on the average person. So, as she mentioned earlier, in
Yeah.
functional medicine, we use our blood ranges based on optimal ranges. So,
Yeah.
basically, like optimal performance ranges. And so, that's just something to consider when you're just looking at average blood work, is like that range is based on the average population.
Yeah.
So, you can totally have blood work that's within range, but you can be dealing with some weird symptoms. And that's basically exactly what I teach in like the courses and the group programs that I do. And it's also why like we run group programs is it gets super lonely trying to do this stuff by yourself all the time. And like I think humans are meant to heal in community. So like like group programs is one of my favorite ways to work with people because then someone else is like, "Oh, I dealt with this. I dealt with this." And then you realize that there's seven other people sitting in front of you who are also dealing with the same thing and that you're not that abnormal. But yeah, for the heart rate thing, that can involve a lot of things. So it can be different than just your thyroid. So that is
Yeah.
something where I would take like a really deep history on someone, and that's one of the keys of functional and integrative medicine is learning how to take a real history. Like if you come and see me, my intake paperwork is gonna take you about 30 minutes. Sorry, not sorry. Like there's a reason that I do that. And it lets me really look at like everything that may be leading up to that and where that might be coming from. And that also has to do with like
Yeah.
nervous system regulation and vascular health and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I can't answer that question directly just off of that piece of information, but just know that there's a lot of different pieces. It can even be tied to the environmental health thing that we were talking about, like mold and environmental toxins can totally make you have like
Oh yeah.
irregular
Yeah.
vascular symptoms. So, yep, and then someone said like an adjustment in the thoracic region can totally affect heart range. Yeah, so that's one of the things I think people misunderstand about chiropractic is like they think of it as just like a like oh yeah, like I hurt my shoulder, like I'm just gonna crack this thing and that's it. Well, no, chiropractic, the entire purpose of it is actually balancing your nervous system so that your body's energetic electrical life force can flow through your cells better. Like that's the whole point of it. And when you're working on the spine, it is basically this neurological delivery system to your organs. And so that is why a chiropractic adjustment can actually affect organ function, is it basically fixes and optimizes the communication between the brain and the body. So chiropractic is actually highly neurologically focused and that's its purpose, that's its role. So body work can do a whole bunch of stuff, but health is very rarely from one thing. Like a health issue is very rarely one cause, which is, and that's what functional medicine does, is it looks at all of the causes. I actually just put up a reel the other day talking about like what I was looking for in somebody with neurological tics. And we
Hmm.
look at things in a really complex way. And it's also like looking for the nuances. So when your blood work comes back fine, that's when I run like a micronutrient panel. And that person with neurological tics, even though they're taking a multivitamin with tons of B vitamins, their B vitamins were tanked. And so, like, they're not absorbing their B vitamins. So now we have to figure out why that's happening. And that probably has to do with a gut thing. And it may have to do with an autoimmune reaction to some of the cells in their stomach that produce something called intrinsic factor, which is a chemical that allows you to absorb your B vitamins in the first place. So if you have like weird things going on where you're like, I'm doing all the right things, I'm eating all the right things, there's usually something somewhere in your life that is affecting that. Like even in my own life, I've had a realization recently where like I did all the right things, but I was still really fatigued. And then I realized that my one Achilles heel that I was doing was watching TV at night before I went to bed and not getting good sleep. And when I started to cut that out of my life, my sleep changed drastically, and all of a
Mm.
sudden my fatigue really got a lot better. And that's like, I'm a practitioner, right? I know all the things I'm supposed to do. I'm still a human. I still make mistakes, but it's like teaching people how to track these things in their life and teaching them how to be like, I did do this thing differently the other night and I did feel crummy the next day. Maybe I should not do that every single day of the week and see if I feel better. So it's like you start to almost gamify your life and your health, and you start to kind of see how you can make yourself feel better, and you start to tie it to different things. And this is where journaling can be really helpful. And then, if you start doing more exercise and you start getting more energy, that's a sign, like Dr. Kibber was talking about, that like your body is ready for that. It's ready for more resistance training, and it's actually going to help you build your mitochondria, which are like the energy powerhouses of your cells and all of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, anyway, that's yet another soapbox, sorry. But do you have any like other thoughts that you'd want people to know, or any kind of last things, or where they could find you if they want to work with you?
Yeah, I think sometimes we like to go down rabbit holes if we're, because being diagnosed with an autoimmune condition can be really overwhelming. And I
Yes.
think, going back to your idea of like, you noticed that you were watching TV and when you stop doing that, you change your sleep. So I think getting the big three dialed in
Yeah.
first. So like your sleep, how you're eating, and your exercise, how you're moving your body. Then like if you're fatigued or if you have difficulty losing, like you can't lose weight if you don't sleep, right? So if you're struggling with fatigue or weight gain related to an autoimmune condition, like get your big dial movers, you know, dialed in properly. So
And will
like your
you just
sleep,
list those for people again?
sure, like how you're sleeping, the quality and the quantity, how you're eating, and then how you're working out or how you're moving your body. And once you do that, go down those rabbit holes. Like I see in these Facebook groups, they're like, my low dose naltrexone prescription is this much, and it's like, okay, but like, are you sleeping? Like, are you doing all the like big things first, the big three? Then go down the rabbit hole of like, okay, like move out a mold, diagnose a parasite, whatever's maybe environmental load it will be. Um, Versus I feel like sometimes people start with those things, but they don't have like the basics, the foundation set. And when you do that, so for example, like as you know, like doing a mold detox protocol can be brutal. It can
Intense.
be really intense. You can feel like death.
And
And
you
then
got
once,
to do it in the right order.
yeah. But like if you're not sleeping, if you're not pooping, if you're not, eating well and moving and sweating, that detox protocol is going to be even more brutal than it probably already is. So whatever, like get the foundation right, um, and then start to address other things that could be adding inflammatory load. Um,
And I, and I
yeah,
think what she just said is like super important, like sweating.
yeah,
People forget how important it is to sweat, and this goes with the movement and resistance training, right? Because when you sweat, you detox. And so, like, if I'm working with someone with environmental exposure, sometimes if we just get the big three right, like she was just talking about, we get your gut balanced with the food, we get you sweating and detoxing with movement. We also make sure that you're pooping, which is another form of detox, and then we get you sleeping so your body can actually cleanse itself. Sometimes that's
yeah,
enough. Like, and that's why like I love giving people education, is because there's so much you can do at home by yourself just by starting to regulate those things.
yeah, 100%. So yeah, so masterclass starts
Okay.
tonight. I dropped a link in a couple times if anyone wants to join. It's free. I literally had someone email me like, it's free. And I was like, it's free. Um, and every single person who joins, I ask them to just share like their number one struggle with weight loss. So I think so far, when I checked this morning, like 530-ish women have signed up. So obviously it's a topic people want to know more information about. Um, but yeah, it's going to be super fun. I'm going to try and make it fun and not too like technical. So
Beautiful. Thank
yeah.
you so much for like kind of being on the same page and just educating people for the sake of educating, because I think it's something that the world really needs. And then someone said, how do you join? She had put the link in. I'll have her text me the link and then I'll put it in the
Sure.
comments of this video when I post the recording. And then, of course, it's Instagram. And so you won't be able to click on the link in the comments. So you'll just have to type it in. Or you can go to her Instagram page, and I believe she has the link there as well. So that would
Yep.
be a good way to do it.
Yep.
And it's just Dr. Emily Kiberd, KIBERD.com/weight loss. That's pretty
Yep.
easy to remember.
Yep.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Kiberd.
Thank,
This was really fun. I
yeah.
love getting to talk to you.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. And we'll
Uh,
have to do gluten-free Mexican again soon.
Yes, absolutely. To all the people who joined, thank you so much. And thanks for your questions. Like, I love doing this live so that we can figure out what you actually need, because that's why we're here, is to be here for you. So never be afraid to reach out. You can reach out on Instagram or just go to either of our links, and we both always have education going on. So have a wonderful day, and we'll talk soon.
All right.